Hey everyone, welcome back to Right Media Group Chronicles. Today we've got Trevor Stolber, co-founder of Vibe Logic and someone who's been doing SEO since before Google was even a thing. 28 years in the game. He's built two agencies, developed something called Web Presence Intelligence, and he's got some pretty controversial takes on AI and SEO that I think are going to surprise you. Trevor, I'm excited to have a discussion with you today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much for the intro.
You said that 70 to 80% of what's written about SEO is just wrong. So could you give me the worst advice you keep seeing agencies preach pretty much like it's gospel?
Yeah, and this has been a thing for basically as long as I've been doing SEO. And it's sort of resultant of the nature of the beast, right? In that it's always evolving. But and I will answer the question in a second, but I want to start by going off on a tangent. So think about the fact that LLMs, so my statement is, roughly 70 to 80% of what's written about SEO is either very out of date or just wrong. That's what the LLMs have had to consume. So what they're going to put out is based on largely incorrect data, which is a problem in and of itself. But yeah, if I could just a couple of examples. So one of the ones that refused to die for like a good 10 years after it was stopped being a thing or was never really a thing in the first place is keyword density. So what's the optimum keyword density? And there were a bunch of studies, bunch of people making claims. The numbers that were talked about being, the optimum keyword density. If you ever read a piece of text that had 5% keyword density, it just reads horrifically. No one would ever spend the time actually reading it. And that was never really the case anyway. But that stuck around for so long. And then another one was the search engine submission. It was, we'll submit your site to hundreds of search engines hundreds of times. The idea was that, if you keep repeatedly submitting your website, the search engines will know about it, but it just fundamentally didn't work with how the technology worked because it has a copy of your website. It uses its algorithm to look in its index and see where that algorithmically ranks. Doesn't matter if you submitted it a bazillion times, it's still evaluating it only based on the index that it had. So that was a nonsense that never worked. And it was a service that was pushed and touted for years. So as just a couple of examples of how bad the industry can be sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, something I keep hearing, and you can let me know your opinion about it. On apparently, like LLMs like ChatGPT, it takes its facts from places like Reddit, which is an opinion site.
Google was like a pains to point out that they're not a truth engine, they're a search engine. So if you search for something that's nonsensical or something that's not true and someone's written about it, it will return it because it matches your search. It's
Mhm.
not a truth engine, just the same as these LLMs aren't. I mean, they just generate text based on the corpus of information that they have. So if they're trained, and very much like my point about the SEO industry and all of the data that's consumed being largely incorrect or at least not current. It's the same problem space. So yeah, it's a problem. And I mean, there's quite a few examples of these like prompt injections and like, poisoning and putting things in that are not true. Doesn't fact check. It doesn't. There's no QC when it ingests the data. It's just what people have written, and it's kind of like the problem with the modern media and social media. Someone's opinion isn't necessarily true, and it isn't necessarily fact, but kind of gets, just because it gets published, it gets credence.
Yeah, it gets muddled up with the actual facts. That's why for fact checking, I do prefer to use Perplexity. But when you say the stuff about SEO, when clients come to you with an assumption, how do you unteach them the assumptions they have about SEO that are wrong?
I just had to do this.
Oh, great.
I had a client that used Claude he was using it to audit just about every single area of his business.
Oh, wow.
And, I get it. It makes sense. But the trouble is it can be wrong and confidently wrong. And
Mhm.
it was quite wrong in a lot of areas. And one of the critical areas it cited as a urgent SEO fix that we needed to do right now was meta tags in the body content. And there weren't. And even if there were, wouldn't be a major SEO problem. I mean, it wouldn't be valid HTML and it wouldn't render and it wouldn't do anything useful, but it also wouldn't really affect anything. And then it also cited various schema as not being available on the site, which there was. So it's actually a real problem. I've had it happen a couple times recently, and that is like the essence of what's wrong with these LLMs. They spit out something that sounds very credible, and they can. Don't get me wrong, like can be very useful, but I think in the SEO industry, especially because there's so much written that's either out of date or just wrong, that's what they've got to go on. So I think it's quite a problem. It's quite a for people practicing SEO, and also the people that want to, it makes sense. Let's use an AI, let's use an LLM to help me with my SEO strategy and general digital marketing. You always need a gut check.
Mm.
It's a problem that seems to be becoming more and more of a problem. And I actually just posted, like, I'm betting that the search trend of help, I used AI to run my business for me and now it's ruined, will be spiking by the end of 2026. So it's a
Uh-huh.
risk, but also an opportunity.
Yeah, it's like when I keep speaking to a few agencies and they call this some sort of like therapy for your business because similar things what you're saying, AI is going to damage your business because you rely on it so much
Hmm.
that you will need therapy in order to recover.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I've heard, obviously the software developers and software industry is under significant threat from it. But I do think, and there will be a good category for basically help. I vibe coded this app and now it's terrible kind of thing, because it's like it's band aid upon band aid upon band aid, and it can spit out something functional. Like, I use it; it's very good. It can get you to functional code really quickly. But for large scale multi user production level applications, I think it's not the way, and I think people will come to realize that probably by the end of 2026.
Probably from all the businesses that already got burned by using AI. There's already been a few on the news that sort of fired their employees, invested everything into AI, and just wasted money. Because there's strategic ways in how to approach AI and how to like integrate it into your business, not firing everyone suddenly and just going all in.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the best approach is to have it amplify and leverage what
Yeah.
you already have. Like, from a pure economic standpoint, it makes sense. And in some large businesses where you've got, lots of people doing the same monotonous activities, there's maybe more of a case for it. But I think history will show that it's not wise to let it loose on your business and get rid of all of your employees.
Yeah, I want to talk about your two agencies. So you said that you have Stolber Digital in our previous chat, and then you also launched Vibe Logic while being a CTO. So I wondered, what is the thought process behind splitting focus like that? So you have sort of two things going on. Some people can't maintain one.
It's a challenge. So systems and processes help a lot. Working most of the hours in the day also helps with that. Um, but having a good team and having good systems and processes helps. And there are a lot of parallels as well. I mean, we have some shared resources, systems, tools, and people. So it's not like they're not entirely separate. They're entirely separate entities, but functionally they're not entirely separate. So it's a grind, it's a challenge. I mean, I don't have a great a great answer to that. I don't have any really great pearls of wisdom other than use as many hours in the day as you can, and just have good systems and processes and good people.
I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs do listen to our podcast as well. And it's like running two things as an entrepreneur. Do you believe that throughout this journey, sometimes there was a moment where you bit off more than you can chew? Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I guess I probably go through cycles and not at
Mm.
any particular frequency. But yeah, I mean, I think that's true in any kind of entrepreneurship. There's highs and lows, right? Sometimes you just question, why am I, when
What am
when
I
when it
doing with my
y
life?
yeah, when it's you have to be up all night working on a problem, or, certain things go wrong, and it's like, but then there's the other side of it as well when you get the successes and the wins. So it's highs and lows. It's a roller coaster for sure.
I think sometimes that's why I heard the story as well from somebody else. It's like entrepreneur launches the business, makes millions and billions from it. But then they sell the business and they want to start all over again in their garage because of the thrill, the
Yeah,
addiction.
yeah. I think I'm guilty of this. Like, I think both my business partner Stefan and I were both a little guilty of this. We're really good at doing the 0 to 1 and
Huh.
getting something to 80%. To really
Mhm.
run an effective business, you need the people that help you finish the things and run the things well. But yeah, I totally get it. Like, I mean, we have ideas all the time where we want to start again from scratch on something else. But I think having the discipline to stay focused is difficult, and it's key. But yeah, like, I totally get that. And I mean, I think another people get a little bit fooled as well by, grass is always greener kind of thing. You talk about big numbers in revenue and it sounds great, but when you actually look at the mechanics of running a business, it's nowhere near like what people think it is.
There's a lot of grind that goes into it, like, when nobody's watching. I bet it did as well when you first launched your agency. It's like you're putting in the hours, the work, the sleepless nights in order to get it to a good foundation, and then I guess it accelerates from that point. But one thing you mentioned is you don't want drastic growth, you want a conservative growth, and you've seen agencies that scale too fast and then they crash. So, what's the most common mistake you see them make that you want to try and avoid in your agency specifically?
Yeah, I just think it's scaling too fast. I mean, it sounds like a good problem to have, right? Having too many clients,
Mm.
and I guess you get to somewhat choose which problems you want. But I think if you acquire too many clients, promise too many things, and don't have the foundation to support it, you very suddenly find yourself in a position where you can't sustain it. You can't focus on the other areas of the business, and quality will drop. My biggest thing was I didn't want to lose quality with scale, which is why I took a really conservative approach. I talked to a few people as well, and they had sort of seen other agencies grow, and we even got to feel it a little bit. Like we used to white label for this agency that got bought out by a much bigger agency, and they bought us with them, or bought us with them, and then they dumped a huge amount of work on us in 1 month, and it was just yeah, and it like at the beginning, I'm like, this is awesome. We got all this revenue. And then it was just chaos. So
Yeah.
it was not effective. And so like I sort of got caught up in what I was trying to avoid by accident. But we definitely took, like you say, a very conservative approach.
And if there was somebody listening, an agency owner right now who's tempted to hire 5 people next month, what would you tell them?
I mean, you got to look pretty hard at your numbers and be pretty confident. Getting secured revenue to match that base is key. People talk about getting a little ahead of the skis, and you got to take some risks. So I'm pretty conservative and risk averse, probably more than a lot. But and you got to sweat the numbers a little bit, and you got to sweat payroll. But I would say never put yourself in the position where if you really need to hire five, hire three, and then make
That's smart.
make sure you've made the right decision, and make sure, because hiring is no trivial thing. I mean, it takes time. And then if you've got the need to hire 5 people in a short space of time, you run the risk of hiring someone because you need to, not because they're the right fit.
Mm.
And that is potentially more dangerous in a business than just growing too fast.
That's great advice there because you're sort of desperate for this project to hire somebody. So you would overlook a lot of things.
And it's hard to turn down money, right, when it makes
Mm.
sense. But like having the ability to turn it down if it's not the right fit for you at the right, yeah,
Is that
not
turning
everybody.
down work that don't align with your values?
Yeah, well, and not necessarily even just values, just like, so this is where some companies, larger companies, will have a dependency clause, and you can't be like a third, like they can't, their business can't be a third of your book, right? So if they were to pull the plug on you, they basically kill your business. Some companies will have this dependency clause where they don't want to work with companies that are highly dependent on them, for that
Mm.
reason. And I just think just don't put yourself in those kind of positions. It's tempting. And you got to take some risks. I'm not saying be completely risk averse, but if you don't have the throughput to support the revenue, and also talked about this just last night, we were working on some financials. Like profitability and profit is not the same thing. I remember, like in business management school, the lecturer said, "Isn't I was in the UK at the time? Is £1 million? Isn't?" Everyone's like, "Yeah, of course it is." And then she said, "Well, what if your revenue is £1 billion? That's like 0.1% profitability. You have one raw material change, or one process, or one input cost change. All of a sudden, you're losing money. So that £1 million profit isn't as good as it sounds." So getting the right structure of the business so you have a decent profit margin as you take on staff and as you take on revenue, making sure you maintain those margins is really important.
Yeah,
Is
of course.
all of a sudden you get to that large point. Let's say 10 million ARR, let's say you're there. That's great, right? But what if your expenses are 9.5? All of a sudden, some API cost changes that you're reliant on, or some software tool goes up, or your staff demand more salary because the market's changed and you've got a locked in long-term price, but inflation's increased. Like all those things are risks.
You said you love risk mitigation because Clearly, you had that knowledge about business agency owners. How can they risk mitigate against all of the things you just said?
Yeah, so contracts are very important.
Uh huh.
Having secured revenue is very important. Making sure that you have it mapped to what you can support by who is very important. And then there's some financial planning things and just due diligence on what you buy and what you spend. Like a big thing with especially digital agencies is acquisition of tools like SaaS tools and subscription based tools. Do a quarterly audit of what you're spending money on, because like I've saved like over $10,000 a year by unchecking a couple of boxes, right? That you just didn't realize you were spending. And so, yeah, there's definitely a danger of that. You know, if you need them, absolutely use them. But like I think a lot of people in our industry suffer from this shiny object syndrome, the new thing. And
Mm.
these AI tools are like a classic example of it, right?
Yeah.
You sign up for something because it sounds good. You get the cheap, like 3-month price, forget about it, don't use it anymore, and then realize you spent hundreds on it without using it.
Yeah, it's like all the small things they add up. We recently had a quick peek at or a self assessment, sort of the accountants already getting the numbers together, and I'm like, oh, like these we don't use anymore, but we're still paying for them. Like, and they add up, and it like ends up a
Mhm.
few
Oh, they
hundred, and
really
then
do.
a few thousand.
It can be a bigger percentage, and especially because they're positioned as a monthly subscription. You got $10, $50 monthly subscriptions. That's like $6,000 a year, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So recheck your finances. That's the lesson we're getting away from now, and making sure you've got. Would you say you need to have something in a piggy bank in case of emergencies as well?
Yeah, I mean, having we call it a war chest, right? Having a decent war chest, and then the not to get too much into the weeds of like specifically running a business and finances, but there's a couple of approaches you can take, and we're trying to take the profit first mentality. So we take profit into one account, we put tax into another account, and the rest is what you've got left to run the business, right? I think what happens too often is you get your revenue, you pay all your expenses, and what you're left with is just what you're left with, right?
Yeah.
So there's a more structured way to do that, and it just installs diligence and helps you run a business better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love organization. So like having its own little bucket where it goes into, so you're already prepared for the tax man to come and collect his share. Everything's sort of in and of itself working. And I talking about how you acquire leads for your business specifically, you said you do a bit of inbound social media and cold email. I want to specifically talk about cold email. You said you hate it, but it's a numbers game. So what does that numbers game actually mean for you? And can you just like specify it for us a little bit?
Yeah, so essentially it's just a function of percentages, right? Of how many you send, how many get opened, how many read it, how many it resonates with, and what the conversion is ultimately to that. So the trouble and the thing I don't like about it is it's you send a lot to get a little, right? And I mean it's like, and also like I like the analysis of it and seeing how well different email formats and types and messaging performs. But what I don't like is just sending mass emails out to lots of people. I mean, they're targeted, right? So that it's not just anyone with an email address, they're targeted people, which does improve the conversion quite considerably. But yeah, it's just a numbers game. And so then you got to deal with, and we use a couple of software tools that help, but you got to deal with managing multiple similar domains, right? So you don't burn your own domain,
Yes.
and those lists have to be warmed up. And I just don't like the nature of it. Like the works, but I don't like the nature of it.
I've spoken to another agent owner, and she's trying to be very authentic. But when it comes to outbound, she said she'd rather send 20 personalized emails rather than mass sending thousands out. What do you think is more efficient in your personal opinion?
Well, I think the probably it's the 20 personal emails, but
Mm,
if you can really, can you do that every day though? Do you know
yeah.
20 personal emails to send every day? And it still takes time. So you're going to spend half of your day finding 20 personal emails every single day of the month. I think that's unlikely. So, and don't get me wrong, there's a mix of that. And I
Mm.
think we would, rather than, it depends on the connection and how you know people. I think LinkedIn is a much more viable place for that with the right connections rather than an email. Just LinkedIn is a good place for that.
Yeah, of course. Talking about the web presence intelligence, you said it's not traditional SEO, it's finding visibility opportunities everywhere. So can
Yeah.
you walk me through what that actually looks like for a client?
Yeah. And yeah, so we say that your audience isn't stuck in a channel, nor should your marketing be. We're SEO uh, based, but the search data is what's valuable, not the channel specifically. So, we talk about the search box. No one lies to their search bar, right? It's an engine of intention. So you get a lot of really good information from the SEO data, and then you can figure out, what an audience looks like, segment it, figure out who they are, what they're searching for, and then who's supplying. So you got the demand side, which is what people put into the search box, and you got the supply side, which is the web pages that come back. Traditional SEO is like an us versus them kind of approach. You've got one spot on the search page to get there. There's all this other landscape of visibility out there, like, social media, video, partners, resellers, forums, display opportunities, a whole bunch of different categories of places where you can find and influence visibility. And we can figure out like how you can affect that, where you should place your flags, and what the value of it is. So it's a much more like multi-channel approach using search data as the basis.
That sounds very interesting. I'm very curious to dive a little bit deeper into that. So, if someone's been doing SEO for years, what would you say is the hardest part of getting them to buy into this approach? Is it new? Is it on the market yet?
Yeah, it's on the market. I mean, it's like it's a new category, I guess, or it's
Okay.
definitely a slant on existing categories. It's an approach that most people don't take,
Hmm.
which is part of the challenge because we have to educate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of the conversations we have, you can just see people are thinking, hang on, I thought we were talking about SEO, but now you're talking about this. But so it is a little bit of a harder sell. There's an education piece to it. And yeah, like I say, I think I don't know if it qualifies fully as a distinctly new category, but it's definitely a distinctly new way to offer existing categories. So it's definitely a multi-channel approach rather than just a singular SEO channel.
And is this like a software that you have in house that you run and see the potential that a business can actually have?
Yeah, so we're building the system that does this, and there's still a fair bit of manual work on top of it. And this is it's sort of it's like the essence of what should you automate and what shouldn't you automate. So we're trying to figure out like what makes sense to automate and what doesn't, right? Because human intuition and critical thinking is still very valuable. I think it's like the new superpower because so few people use it, and there's a tendency to just throw everything at an LLM and say, "Hey, do this for me." So it's very, very detailed, granular in the data. It does a lot of segmenting, and then there's quite a lot of we use quite a few APIs and quite a few different analyses, and it's layering data on top of each other to get more value from the data. So we end up with something that you can't get other ways, and that data is very valuable. And then we find the opportunities for people and give it to them to action on. And this is true of our SEO and true with this approach as well. One thing that I really hate about the industry is where people are just like, there's a report from an SEO tool. There you go. That's your SEO. And if it's not prioritized and actionable, it's not very useful for people. So we try and build that into what we do as well. We try and make sure everything's prioritized and actionable.
What's the time frame? I'm suspecting you still do traditional SEO for people that still want it. But to this new approach, what is actually the time frame and when can they start seeing results?
Yeah, good question. And I'll try and avoid using the classic SEO. It depends. So, I mean, for display, you have a list of places, and the system can also tell you what ads you should go put. Very customized ads relevant to the audience and the content that's doing it. So you can do that almost right away. Right. Your social media teams can activate on things pretty quickly, identify a piece of content that you need to have that you don't have. That depends on how many resources the companies have. And getting content produced and published is one of the biggest challenges. Some companies can do it quick, some can't. And then like if there's partnerships, that greatly depends on the nature of the teams you're working with. You might find you're competing with one of your resellers. You might find there's a partner opportunity you didn't know about. And then like the forum kind of stuff, that's just dependent on how active your social media team can be. You might find there's some outreach opportunities that usually come from it as well. You might find that someone that's an influencer in the niche that you care about is talking about you in a very positive light, that you should be sharing that and you should be reaching out to them and seeing if there's opportunities to work together. So those kind of things come out. We talk about these as like nano influencers. And oftentimes, like if you're looking like doing a traditional influencer search, you'll set some thresholds and some filters, and you will miss the people that are true nano influencers, but they're nano influencers in the very specific topic area that you care about. So that's one of the differences that we bring. We find the very specific places and people that are talking about the topics that you want to be found for. And they always come up in it as well. So we just call that's our I3 portion, intelligent influencer identification. That's one of the facets of the web presence intelligence.
You mentioned many businesses struggle with content. What sort of content is it? Is it video content? Is it post social media?
Yeah. So generally we're talking about web page content, but we also say like it doesn't have to rank, which might sound like a really strange thing for an SEO person and agency to say, right? But like that piece of content that was identified because the audience is interested in it can be a social media post, can be a video, could be a podcast, right? It could be an interview, it could be whatever. So it has the piece of content has much more value than just being a web page. And I think Michael King talks about this, like, you know, create once and distribute many. So that one piece of content can serve many different formats. So it's been the web presence intelligence identifies the need for that content. It doesn't just mean write a blog post about this. That's part of the challenge as well, right? Because what I just said sounds good, but like who has the resources to go and make multiple formats and pieces of content from one topic? Some people do, some people can action on it, and others can't.
I've got a controversial question for you. You're saying they need content. Obviously, this your new approach sort of tests what they need and where they need it. What about when the content is AI generated? What's your take on that?
So we check for that. We do not like or want to use AI content, AI generated content for organic search. There's a lot of evidence now that shows that these AI generated content gets either devalued or completely de-indexed. It's unusual or historically unusual for a site to get wholly de-indexed rather than just penalized in an algorithm update. But we have seen that recently, like some sites, these are not our clients. Like we've had
Huh.
a couple of clients that have had AI generated content and they didn't even know that it was. They've hired writers that have used AI content. So it's been a problem. And also the detection tools are not that accurate. I think sometimes content we had a situation where it was genuinely human written content, but it got flagged as AI. The detectors are not that great. So that's a problem. You have generated by AI, the easier it is to detect. There's always a fingerprint in it. There's a statistical analyzable fingerprint because of the frequency of the words used. So you can tell which model created the text.
Wow.
And there's a lot of case study now that shows that websites that mass scale AI content, their traffic goes up, but then they crash. So it's not good long term. That doesn't mean you can't use it for certain creatives, though. You absolutely can. And the content that AI LLMs generate is usually fairly good. It's credible. It is considered unique. The messaging can be quite good. So you can get to an output quite quickly and easily. I think it's just like a lot of the things, choose the right place to use it. Don't use it as default.
Talking about NA10 and workflows, you mentioned that all of that is overhyped. So everyone's building agents right now. Why do you think, in your opinion, that is just noise?
It's the new shiny thing, isn't it? It's the new shiny object. And they, again, like a lot of the things with AI, the promise is really great. In theory, you can throw together some workflow that you're just going to have to press a button and out comes magic. And the reality is some of these things work for one specific solution, but then they don't do any kind of variation of that very well. And so these things are not very scalable, and they're not as scalable as they look. And the examples that you see are usually very specifically tailored to one thing. And then very often as well, when you look at what they're doing, they're massively overcomplicated for the thing that they're doing. And they're just like, it looks good. It looks great. And I love that sort of workflow of those tool builders. It resonates with me well, but like using what they're used for is usually not what they're most effective at. And yeah, like I say, it looks great. They work for one very specific thing, but they don't scale well and quality will suffer. And I just think businesses that go all in on AI will seem like they're doing well to start with and then will falter.
Can you give me one automation that actually moved the needle for your agency
Yeah.
versus the ones that looked cool but did nothing?
Yeah. Okay. So we have a ton of like just lower level Python API based. A lot of our systems and processes are built on Google Search Console and Python analysis of the data. But we've recently used, so this is for pitching. We do a competitive assessment. We pull back some data via an API and get a lot of information based on a target and their competitors. And then we pull all that data together. We have some logic and some analysis, and then we use an LLM to contextualize it based and provide a standardized output and contextualize information. So we find risks, opportunities, and challenges for a prospect relatively in an automated fashion. So we've recently used AI to do that. And it's just, again, it's kind of a numbers game. Like it takes us 5 minutes to create one of these things versus, half an hour or an hour. And it just makes it more scalable.
Yeah, for sure. And do you only set up these little workflows and automations internally, or do you also do something for your clients?
Primarily internally, we're very clear about the risks of AI, especially for website content. There have been a couple of instances for clients where they have needed something that warranted it. I think one of the just lower level basic SEO things where I think it does make sense. If you've got, say, 1,000 pages that don't have meta tags on a large site, right, and don't have a meta description, I think you can use AI to generate that based on the page content to generate a meta description. To me, that's a reasonable use of SEO. So we've done that kind of thing for some clients. We've done some higher level analysis of sites as well, usually with other data sources and tools, right? Quite often Screaming Frog is a really good tool. You can plug in a lot of APIs to that. And one of the things we do use is using the vector embeddings and then content clustering within SEMrush. I think that's a really good use of the tool. It's a combination of all of the good uses are where you're layering it on top of something and adding value to existing data. Just saying, hey, LLM, go do this for me is not usually a good use.
Everyone's either saying AI is going to kill SEO or GEO is just SEO. You clearly on one side of that, so I would like to hear your thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, and I think in the very early days, like it wasn't obvious, and so people had opinion, and that's like kind of the problem in SEO is people have an opinion. If it's not backed up with data, it's not that
Yeah.
valuable. And this is, I very much think of SEO as the science, not an art. It is a little bit art and science, but at the end of the day, we're dealing with an algorithm, so it's much more a science than an art. It's the dynamic nature of the surface that it's working on that makes it feel more like an art sometimes. So there were some a few thoughts on what types of things these LLMs needed, and did it need a completely different approach to SEO? Because it is a completely different thing. I mean, you could argue that the large language model is essentially an index, but it isn't really an index, and like it's not ranking in the traditional sense, and it doesn't have the same inputs as like the backlinks and page rank to have the same kind of cause and effect. So from that respect, it's different. But being visible everywhere your audience is, right? Our tagline, being visible means you're going to be visible in the LLMs. Having good content on your website means the LLMs are going to consume that content and then will be able to return something about you because you had the content. And if your web presence is a blank page and an LLM has crawled that, they're never going to return that to anyone. All right. You have to have the content that talks about it. But structurally, I don't think it's that different. And Google has recently affirmed this. I think in between the time we originally spoke on it and Google and both John Mueller and also Bing's head of web search and web liaison to the SEO industry have all come out and said like good SEO is good GEO. Like it's not drastically different. One of the, I think, bigger like structural technical distinctions was whether or not things like structured data and schema mattered. Because in theory, they don't. In theory, an LLM strips out all of the tags, the code, and the structure and just creates the text. And that's true on a very base level. That is what an LLM does. But what we're dealing with these modern LLMs and search-based LLM tools is they do level on data. And so it was Mark Williams Cook of Canada. He did an experiment where they only had an address for a business that was made up in the schema. Didn't exist anywhere else on the web or in the content on the page. and it was returned by an LLM. So you know irrefutably that LLM had to use the schema structured data. So we do know that they use schema, and it makes sense because schema is a structured way to say how websites and content is structured. So it would make sense that they use it, and there is evidence that they do use it. But yeah, I mean, you've got good content and you're showing up in the right places about the topics that people care about, you're going to do so in the LLMs too.
Yeah, this might be another controversial one leading up to that. But there are a few people saying that blogging is one way to stand out in LLMs. Now, you have your own opinion about that, so I'd love to just quickly hear it.
I mean, so in the same vein as like having the content, I mean, blogging blogging is like the default content strategy. And it's kind of like the lazy content strategy. It's not structured, it's not thought out. There's a whole other universe of proper content strategy above blogging. Blogging's like low level, level one content strategy, right? But at a very base level, if you don't have the content, you're never going to get found for it. So putting the content on a blog is a lot better than not putting it anywhere. Another thing a lot of people suffer with, I think I do too, I've got a huge content library that's not been published. And
Um,
that's my fault. And I mean, like, is serving no purpose sitting in my Google Drive, right? I should be publishing it a lot more than I do. I could make excuses for it,
I
but
just
like,
had a conversation with somebody else and they said the exact same thing. They're sitting on a mountain of content, but it's like they don't have time because they're so busy delivering for their clients and they
yep.
leave their agency last yet again. But it's business development, end of the day, isn't it? Content. Just get it out there.
Yeah,
Find
I
some
mean,
time.
get it out there. I mean, like, and same with social media posting. I mean, if you got something to say, just say it. I mean, there might be an optimum time and an optimum hashtag and a right first tag, but like, just say it, just publish
Yeah,
it.
exactly. No, I love that explanation there and preach what you say pretty much.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Trevor, last question I want to ask you. What is your goal with your agency? What growth wise? You said you want a strategic growth. Do you have any set little milestones you want to achieve this year?
Not specifically this year, but I have the vision that we want to grow to like a 50-person team. We're like a 5-person team right now,
Okay, yeah.
at least local US. So that's the goal. And want to do it in a very considered manner. I don't have any like real specific, we must hit this revenue target this year. Like it's more like just growing sustainably. And yeah, we just want to grow the business. We'd love for web presence intelligence to become more widespread and well known. This is a way for us to do that. So thank you.
Yeah,
Um,
of course. It's been a pleasure.
yeah, I mean, it's just really interesting times in the industry. It's always interesting, but this is a particularly new and interesting time. So
Mm,
I do think that this AI stuff is quite overblown, and a lot of people will be licking their wounds from it in a year or so. And hopefully this video will age well.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really it.
And in order to get to that 50-person team, what is the things that you have to achieve or get to in order to make it reasonable growth, but not exponential, where you're sort of losing control?
Yeah, well, it's just a considered managed approach. So just staging up and hiring the
Mhm.
staff at the right point. And just talked about this last night. Yeah, just making sure that we're staffing up as we grow the right level, right? Not being too aggressive, and just growing sustainably.
And how you planning to put yourself out there more so people keep you on top of mind? Apart from doing podcasts, getting yourself
Yeah,
out
well,
there on
and
content.
sales is definitely not my strong suit. I'm the technical person on the team, but no, I mean, there's like three things we're doing. The outreach is one, the network connections and the
Mhm.
and the publishing is the other. And it's much more our CEO and head of operations working on outreach and making sure that we're getting known for what we're doing.
Of course,
So
yeah.
that's the plan, just to grow sustainably with that and driving revenue.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Now, otherwise, if you have a business and your plan is not growth, whether it's, reasonable growth or exponential growth, what's the point of having a business, right?
Right, absolutely.
Trevor, thank you so much for taking the time to do this podcast with me. It's been great. If people wanted to connect with you, find out more about your services or what you're doing, where should they look?
Yeah, I think just our website, vibelogic.com, and LinkedIn. Pretty active on LinkedIn. You'll find me on there often. So those are the two places.
And for anyone listening, as always, thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like and let me know your favorite takeaway from Trevor down below in the comments.